From awaytogarden.com and robinhoodradio.com, this is A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach, your weekly invitation to dig in and grow.
I'm on my third generation of seed starting lights, a journey that began back in the day when shop lights with so-called cool white and warm white fluorescent tubes combined were all we gardeners knew. Eventually, I moved up to newer high-output fluorescents, and now maybe the switch to LEDs beckons. But how does a person shopping for grow lights find his or her way through the array of possibilities out there? That's today's topic with horticulturist Leslie Halleck, author of the book Gardening Under Lights, to help simplify things. But first, these messages.
Programming and underwriting support from Garden Tool Company. Garden Tool Company's wide selection of heirloom quality tools for your gardening passion is backed by outstanding customer service, fast shipping, and ongoing support. GardenToolCompany.com. Programming and underwriting support from Brushwood Nursery. For more than 20 years, Brushwood Nursery has shipped the finest selection of clematis and other vines all over the United States with full gallon-sized plant and free shipping. Their website is full of beautiful pictures and information on growing clematis. BrushwoodNursery.com.
Sufficient light is maybe the biggest factor in the equation of success with seedlings, and grow light technology is evolving fast. I asked Leslie Halleck, author of Gardening Under Lights, to return to the show with a 101 on shopping for seed starting lights suited to us as home gardeners. Hi, Leslie, and boy, I hope you have the answers because I'm confused.
Hi, Margaret. Thanks for having me back. And, I had to write a whole book on it because it's just so confusing. Light science and grow lighting for plants can be a daunting topic for sure.
Yes, lots of science. When did the book come out? I can't remember what year that was.
2018, 2 years ago.
Yeah. So when we talked about it when it first came out, we kind of did an overview of different applications of lighting and a little more of the, I guess it's physics. Is it physics of lighting?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this time I wanted to zero in on seed starting. And, I don't even know where to begin, but maybe why might I want to trade up to LEDs? Because I have these T5HOs, the high output T5s, and I love them and they're fine. But even if I love them, every however many years you need to replace your bulbs. And I was thinking, well, if it's time to replace my bulbs, blah, blah, blah. So why might I want to change out, my lights?
When it comes to grow lighting and light available for your plants, it all comes down to efficiency. And when I use the term efficiency in relation to grow lights, I don't mean necessarily how much energy they use. What I mean is how much energy they convert to light versus heat. That determines the efficiency. So the whole point of using a grow light is to get as much PAR, the light that drives photosynthesis in your seedlings, out of that lamp versus heat. The more efficient a grow lamp is, the more of the energy it pulls, it converts to light, usable light, instead of heat. Many of the new quality-made LEDs are becoming much more efficient at delivering more light for the same energy usage versus fluorescents, obviously incandescents, which are very inefficient for photosynthesis. So there's a lot of new developments in all types of grow lighting, fluorescent included. So the HO T5 fluorescents that you're currently using, and HO stands for high output. The shop lights you referred to are T12s and T8s, and those are the bigger tubes. The bigger the fluorescent tube, generally the less efficient it is for our purposes. So it's actually the smaller T5s that are the more efficient fluorescent lamps. Now, those are still good options, and there are new options as well on the market that are more efficient than older generations of T5 fluorescents. So there are still good options, and it's going to be the lowest cost entry point for you as a seed starter. So if you're really looking for a low-cost option entry point, HOT5 fluorescents, specific for growing plants in the cool spectrum, 400K range, are going to be a good option for you, okay? But if you are already at a place where you need to buy new lamps because they do degrade over time, they're not going to keep putting out the same amount of light forever, right? Then switching to newer, more efficient LEDs is a good option. Now, they're generally going to cost you more. They're generally going to be a little bit more expensive than fluorescents. We're paying for innovation costs still with LEDs, but the goal is that you're going to get more efficacy out of these lamps, okay, than you will your fluorescents. So efficiency in terms of how much light output you're getting from that LED versus how much energy you're putting in it is improved over older fluorescent lamps.
Right.
So the goal is that you're going to hit a few birds with one stone, get more efficient usage for the energy that you're putting into the LEDs, perhaps get a longer lifetime out of the lamp, and be able to perhaps use fewer lamps with the LEDs than you would the fluorescents because they're able to put out more light. Does that make sense?
So fewer tubes kind of parallel to each other hovering over our seed trays, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
and we can jump right into that too. So for example, a classic setup that I would use for HOT5 fluorescent lights for seed starting is usually about 4 45-watt fluorescent tubes. That sound familiar?
Right.
Over, a couple square feet. Right. So if you are using a 42-watt LED bar that has a higher output capacity than that fluorescent, you might be able to use 2 or 3 of those LEDs versus 4 fluorescents. That is going to depend on the wattage. If it's a higher wattage LED, it has the potential to put out more light. So if you're using a higher wattage LED bar, you might only need 1 or 2. It all depends on the output capability of that grow lamp. And the more wattage it pulls, the more light output you're typically going to get.
So in my current hood, I have a hood, a good quality hood, that reflective kind of hood that has 4 T5 high output bulbs in it. And I have a choice now, maybe. A
T5 fluorescent fixture, yeah.
Yes. And I understand now that there are some LED, I don't know if you say tubes or bulbs or whatever, strips that have the same little end hardware that I could retrofit this thing. Would I use the same number if it fits 4 of those, or I'd only put in 2, or is it an experiment?
Yeah, so you can replace, if you have a good quality T5 fluorescent fixture, the fixture that you pop your little T5 fluorescent bulbs, the lamps, into the fixture. They make what are called HOT5 LED retrofit bars. You have to be careful when you're buying them because standard LED bars have to typically be wired in to a fixture, or they're plug and play. They come with their own plug and you plug them directly into the outlet. If you want to continue to use your fluorescent fixture, your T5 fluorescent fixture, you need to look for LED retrofit bars. And the 2 little prongs that you see on the end of your fluorescent tubes that pop into that fixture?
Yes.
The LED retrofit bars will also have that same mount. And so you'll pop that fluorescent tube out, you'll pop the LED in. Now, I will warn you that sometimes there can be a little bit of incompatibility. A lot of the T5 fluorescents are 45 watt, if I'm not mistaken, and LEDs could be 42 watts. So sometimes I've had some trouble with older fixtures. But if you have a relatively, within the last few years, fluorescent fixture, you can try using the LED retrofit bars. Now, chances are those LEDs are going to be somewhat higher output, okay, because they're more efficient than your fluorescents. So you might have had 4 T5 fluorescents in that hood. You might only need to use 2 LED bars.
Right. That's what I was just thinking from what you said just a minute ago, is that, and that's another place where I didn't even know that was something I had to think about.
Well, it all comes down to, I think the way to reframe mentally when thinking about light for seedlings or any plants is that it's not about brightness, it's about volume of light, the intensity of light that's going to fall onto the leaves of that plant. The more efficient a grow lamp, the more photosynthetically active radiation, the more light that plant uses to grow it can put out. So if that grow lamp is more efficient and puts out a higher volume of light, then you can use fewer lamps or run it for a shorter time frame. If you have a lower wattage, lower output lamp, you may have to put it closer to that plant and you may have to run it longer. It's all about accumulating a volume of light over a specific period of time on your seedlings.
Okay. So one of the, so you mentioned before one of the downsides of the oldest fluorescents and even some of these newer ones like I have currently, they emit more heat than the LEDs, the good quality LEDs do. And so the baby plants don't necessarily love that. And so it will be nice to have less of the heat near my seedlings, not having to put the light so close to them either. But there are other advantages, like for instance, and I was surprised at this actually, that how many of my readers, I do this column in the New York Times, and I had just mentioned in passing about seed lights that I used the T5s, and people in the comments just like jumped right in and said, "How can you use those? There's mercury in the tubes. They're so bad." And and so there's other reasons why LED technology may be preferred, right? Environmentally speaking, not just the usage of electricity.
I think you could probably make arguments that manufacturing any of these products is going to have negative environmental impacts on one side or the other, whether you're using fluorescents or LEDs, right? So I think we have to be cognizant that there is an environmental impact either way. There is still small amounts of mercury used in fluorescents, not just in HFT5 fluorescent lamps for grow lighting, but in any compact fluorescent lamp, like any of the little CSL bulbs that you use in home fixtures. Yes, so you do need to be cognizant of that, and you do need to be aware that you need to take care when you're disposing those, that they need to go to a special based on where you live, how they collect those sort of materials. So that's another, valid reason, though, that you might want to make the shift. But I'm not going to tell you that manufacturing LEDs
is a green industry.
doesn't also contribute to environmental problems. So I think, you can get into that swamp on either side for sure.
Right. Well,
but the goal with new innovation is to hopefully have a smaller footprint environmentally with more efficient types of lighting technology. Correct.
So if either I'm someone shopping for the first time for a seed starting setup, or I'm replacing newish T5 high output hood, I'm looking to retrofit or whatever. If I'm shopping and I'm thinking about LEDs, the one thing that really confuses me is a lot of the pictures. If I were a giant greenhouse or something, there's a lot more choices. But some of the colors, you talked already a little bit about the wattage, which confused me, but which I understand a little better now. But the colors, some of them look like, I'm thinking on my kitchen counter of it being like bluish, purplish, pinkish. And I'm thinking, that's weird. That's going to be really weird living with that for a few months of the year.
Professionally, we call it purple, blue, purple, light. So color of light we refer to as the spectrum, right? So if you kick back a seventh grade science class, you remember that when you shine a beam of light through a prism, it breaks it into the separate spectrums of light. You have each of the different colors of light of the rainbow that are part of that visible spectrum and that influence photosynthesis. And each one of those colors of light has its own wavelength, frequency, and energy. And the two colors that are, I won't get too technical about this, but primary to driving photosynthesis and productivity are going to be the red and blue spectrums. And you can grow plants strictly under these two colors of light. They are more efficient at driving photosynthesis. Other colors of the spectrum get used for other functions and are absorbed in smaller quantities for photosynthesis, but it's your red and blue light that are primarily driving that process. So if you are growing in a controlled environment, like a greenhouse or a basement or a closet or a grow tent, and that light is not going to be influencing your living space, and you want it to be as efficient as possible. You're growing lettuce or you're growing tomatoes and you want productivity, you might use what's called a dual band LED or a multi-band LED. That means it's not full spectrum. It's only outputting specific color spectrums of light. If it's red and blue, you're going to get that pink-purple colored light. Mm-hmm. If you're using a full spectrum grow lamp, full spectrum means that there is some amount of every color of light included in the output, and it will have a whitish look to your eye. If there's more red light, it might be tinted more red, and we call that a warmer spectrum. If there's more blue, green light, then it will be a cooler, right? Cooler light, cooler spectrum. Okay. And so when you're in your living space, you probably don't want to live with purple light. But if you're growing in a grow tent or a seed starting tent, then you can use the LEDs that are dual band or multi-band that are delivering all or mostly light in the red and blue spectrum, okay, for efficient plant growth. But if you're growing out in a kitchen area or someplace else in your living space, it's going to be much better for you to use a full spectrum white light. Okay. And for seed starting, you generally want to lean towards the cool spectrum. So anything over about 5,000 K on the Kelvin rating, and usually you're going to find lamps that are about 6,400 K. Those are going to be great for seed starting, and they're going to give you a full spectrum white colored light that's easy to live with.
Okay, good.
Does that make sense?
Yes, no, it does. And again, I didn't even know that the purple was most bang for the buck colors. I didn't know that. So I didn't know why some of them were that color and some appeared white to my eyes. I didn't. Right. That's the problem is in the products.
Yeah, efficiency for output. So if you're a commercial grower or you're growing in a controlled environment, then using a tighter spectrum of light range can be beneficial for you potentially.
Okay.
It can be more efficient for you, right? But in a home environment, it's better to look for a full spectrum light that has a wider mix of colors so that it looks more natural to your eye.
Okay. So when we go shopping, I used to know the places to look, and I used to know some of the brand names, and now it's like Brave New World. I don't recognize any of them. And so my inclination is to, for instance, Johnny's Selected Seed, they used to sell like a sort of small basic rig, the Jumpstart rig with the T5, the high output T5 on it. And it was inexpensive and it was good for 2 trays underneath it, kind of a thing. Yep. And they've switched as of this year. They're going to be carrying these strips, these LED strips from Sunblaster, another company, Exactly. But it's like, that's one place and one company. And then when I look on the big greenhouse supply, the lighting supply places, it's like all of these brand names and stuff. And I wasn't sure, are there any sources you want to mention or companies that
I try to be cautious
agnostic
about sort of endorsing any particular brand, right? I don't have any affiliations there. And I will tell you that there are well-made quality grow lamps, and there are not well-quality made grow lamps. And with the boom in LED technology, you have a lot of lighting gear, say coming out of China and other places that, may or may not be as high of quality. I try to buy all of my grow lights from either U.S. manufacturers, U.S. vendors that are repping reputable manufacturers. And so there are some good quality options in LED plug-and-plays and retrofits. Garden Supply Company has some good options. Mm-hmm. Sunblaster is a good brand. Sunlight Supply Company is the manufacturer for that brand as well as some others, and I wholly endorse their products. So if you're looking for products made by Sunlight Supply Company, that's a good option. Gardner Supply Lights are good. And there's a number of others. But I will tell you, I do not buy grow lamps on Amazon. Right. I have had far too many problems with low quality product, breakage, customer service is difficult. I really prefer to go to direct to U.S. retailers, garden centers, hydroponic stores. I will
Yes.
throw out
Yes.
a company up in Wisconsin that I found years ago that I've bought extensively from, called Garden Supply Guys. And they have a great, easy-to-use online website, excellent customer service, good quality products, and they have lots of different lights, lots of different LEDs, all the retrofits. So I'll just throw that out there to them, too. But Sunlight Supply and their subsequent brands are good. Garden Supply Company. Check out Garden Supply Guys for all sorts of indoor growing gear and lights. And I think, that's a good place to start.
That's great because, as I said, I just followed the clue from some reputable company that sells seeds and help. You know what I mean? Has a lot of customers to what they chose to try to get a hint. And I ended up actually at Sunlight Supply Company, having found the Sun Blaster name. So that's good. That's great. Great. How many hours? How many hours do I run them?
Okay. So it's always going to be, my answer is going to be, it depends because how long you light and will depend always on the lamps that you're using, the ambient light in your space and the lamp you're using. If you're using a little 12-watt LED overseas, number one, that's never going to generate enough light, but you'd have to run it constantly. If you're using a 250-watt CFL bulb, you could probably run it for 13 hours and be good. A very general recommendation, if you are using, say, 4 45-watt fluorescent T5s or 2 or 3, 40 to 50-watt LED bars, you're generally going to run those lights over seedlings that are germinating anywhere between 14 hours up to 24 hours. And I'll talk about 24-hour lighting strategy really quick. 14 to 16 hours is a very general ballpark good recommendation for how long to light your seedlings. If you are growing in an otherwise dark basement, a grow tent, or any other space that really doesn't have much ambient light, you probably want to lean towards the 16 hours to potentially 18-hour length of running your lights. If you are starting those seeds in a space where there's lots of ambient bright light in the room, you're probably fine around 14 to 16 hours. It really is going to depend on the other environmental conditions in your space. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So 24-hour lighting strategy is something that you can do, not for tomatoes, because tomatoes kind of reach their compensation point of being able to use that light at about 18 hours or so, 18 to 20 hours. So you don't really want to light them longer than that. But a lot of other seedlings, you can actually light 24 hours a day for like the first 2 or 3 weeks of development, and that really gives them a big boost of light input and gives them a good jump start. And then you can back down to that 14 to 16 hours as they continue to develop. So especially if you're growing in an area that's dark otherwise, or a grow tent, or, a basement or something like that. So you can employ 24-hour lighting strategies on your young seedlings up to about that 2 or 3 week point to give them a real quick jump start.
Well, Leslie Halleck, I also see, I don't know how you have time for everything you do. You had another book come out since we spoke last, and you have one called, I think it's called Tiny Plants, coming soon. Is that right? In March?
Plant Parenting came out last year, and that's all about propagation. Yeah. So if you want to dive into propagation. And then I have my newest book, Tiny Plants, Discover the Joys of Growing and Collecting Itty-Bitty House Plants, is coming out March 23rd. It's up for pre-order now. But if you love indoor growing and you love houseplants but are looking for something completely different, or maybe don't have a lot of room to grow in, or you are really into terrariums or, a little, biophilic designs, Tiny Plants is going to be a fun dive for you.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it and talking to you about it. So thank you for making time today. I know you're super hectic, but I so appreciate it. You're helping me to shop smarter and to find my way through this next step in my lighting experience smarter. So thank you.
My pleasure. If you have any follow-up questions, drop me a line.
I will holler. Thank you.
Programming and underwriting support from Brushwood Nursery. For more than 20 years, Brushwood Nursery has shipped the finest selection of clematis and other vines all over the United States, with full gallon-sized plant and free shipping. Their website is full of beautiful pictures and information on growing clematis. BrushwoodNursery.com. Programming and underwriting support from Garden Tool Company. Garden Tool Company's wide selection of heirloom quality tools for your gardening passion is backed by outstanding customer service, fast shipping, and ongoing support. GardenToolCompany.com.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Now, don't miss an episode. You can subscribe free to the podcast version of the show on Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify. You can find me anytime at awaytogarden.com or on Facebook and Instagram as @awaytogarden. And happy gardening meantime.
Away to Garden with Margaret Roach is a joint production of awaytogarden.com and the smallest NPR station in the nation, Robin Hood Radio.